You found your way to Whispers of Crimes, a quiet corner where the shadows of the past are gently told. Here, we speak of real crimes and mysteries, not to shock or scare, but to wonder, to reflect, and maybe to help you fall asleep. So close your eyes, let your thoughts slow down, and come with me into tonight's case. They were Canada's most infamous killer couple, Bernardo and Karla Homolka. But decades after their crimes shocked the nation, they're back in the headlines. In 2023, Bernardo was quietly moved to a lower security prison, sparking public outrage. And Homolka? She's been living in plain sight, raising children under a new name. How did a plea deal once called a pact with the devil let a serial killer as accomplice walk free? Why do psychologists still debate whether Homolka was a victim or something far more disturbing? This isn't just history repeating. It's a legal and psychological reckoning. Chapter 1. A Pact of Predators, the Evolution of a Killer Couple. The partnership between Bernardo and Karla. Homolka is one of the most disturbing in modern criminal history, not simply because of the crimes they committed, but because of how two individuals from seemingly unremarkable suburban backgrounds devolved into methodical predators. Bernardo was born in 1964 in Scarborough, Ontario. On the surface, he was charming, clean-cut, and intelligent. But from a young age, there were warning signs. As a teen, he was emotionally disconnected, manipulative, and obsessed with control and dominance, especially over women. Diagnosed later with narcissistic and antisocial traits, Bernardo's early criminal career began with voyeurism and escalated into rape. Between 1987 and 1990, he committed at least 13 confirmed sexual assaults in the Toronto suburb, earning the moniker the Scarborough Rapist. Karla Homolka, 5 years younger, came from a middle-class family in St. Catharines, Ontario. She was a veterinary technician, and those who knew her described her as polite, even deferential. But behind that persona was a woman who was deeply infatuated with dominance and control, specifically through Bernardo. When they met in 1987, the psychological dynamic between them shifted quickly into something pathological. Bernardo found in Homolka a partner who not only tolerated his fantasies but facilitated them. Psychological evaluations later suggested a folia dua, rare but documented condition in which two people share the same delusional beliefs, feeding off each other's pathology. In this case, Bernardo's sadistic tendencies and Homolka's submissive adoration created a lethal feedback loop. Their crimes, far from spontaneous, became rituals of power, control, and eroticized violence. Chapter 2. The Victims, the Tapes, and the Blueprint of Control. Their first known victim was Tammy Homolka, Karla's own sister. In December 1990, Karla drugged Tammy with Halcyon, stolen from the veterinary clinic where she worked. She presented her unconscious sister as a gift to Bernardo, who had grown bored with her. Together, they filmed themselves sexually assaulting the teen as she lay unconscious. Tammy would later choke on her own vomit and die, with the death misattributed to alcohol poisoning, a horrific crime covered up as a tragic accident. But the couple didn't stop. In June 1991, they abducted 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey. After imprisoning her for 24 hours, during which they videotaped themselves sexually abusing and taunting her, they murdered her, most likely by strangulation, and dismembered her body, encasing the remains in concrete blocks. Less than a year later, in April 1992, they kidnapped 15-year-old Kristen French. The pattern repeated: captivity, rape, degradation, and death. Kristen fought back, but ultimately succumbed to the same fate. What made the case especially nightmarish were the videotapes. Bernardo compulsively documented his crimes, creating footage that would later become both crucial evidence and a source of legal controversy. These tapes showed Karla not as a coerced witness, but as an active and enthusiastic participant. The video evidence ultimately refuted her later claims of being an abused spouse acting under duress. Chapter 3: A Deal with the Devil, the Legal Fallout in 1993. After a long investigation, Paul Bernardo was arrested and Karla Homolka quickly negotiated a deal with the Crown. She agreed to testify against Bernardo in exchange for a 12-year sentence for manslaughter. Her testimony was framed around the narrative that she was a battered woman, forced into complicity through fear and prolonged abuse. From a legal standpoint, the plea bargain was a calculated risk. At the time of the deal, the police had not yet found the videotapes, which were later recovered from the couple's bathroom ceiling with the help of Bernardo's new defense team. These tapes exposed Homolka's active role in the assaults, undermining her entire narrative. Under Canadian law, once a plea agreement is signed and approved by the court, it becomes binding, even if new evidence surfaces later. This principle, rooted in the legal doctrine of finality of plea agreements, meant that prosecutors could not revoke or amend the deal, no matter how damning the new material was. The media dubbed it the deal with the devil, and the backlash was immediate and intense. Many legal experts criticized the Crown for not waiting to build a stronger case or extract more information. In hindsight, the deal represented a breakdown in prosecutorial judgment, a lesson that continues to haunt the Canadian justice system to this day. Chapter 4: The Psychology of Karla Homolka. Understanding Karla Homolka has become a psychological puzzle for forensic experts. Was she a victim, as she claimed, or a predator in her own right? Multiple psychological assessments, including those conducted by Dr. Hans Arndt and Dr. Ronald Racine, painted a complex picture. Homolka displayed traits consistent with histrionic personality disorder characterized by a need for attention, emotional volatility, and manipulativeness. However, some evaluations noted signs of psychopathy, especially in her flat affect, lack of remorse, and calculated manipulation of the legal system. Her behavior post-arrest reinforced this image. She demonstrated no visible grief or guilt over her sister's death. Instead, she focused on controlling her narrative, carefully crafting letters to Bernardo and practicing statements that would garner sympathy. The contrast between her videotaped behavior and courtroom demeanor was jarring. Her psychological profile diverges sharply from typical battered spouse syndrome. While she claimed fear and coercion, forensic psychologists noted that she had numerous opportunities to escape or alert authorities, but chose not to. Instead, she actively planned, facilitated, and even encouraged the crimes. These inconsistencies led many to believe that her self-portrayal as a victim was a manipulative strategy to minimize legal consequences. Chapter 5: Life after prison reintegration or evasion. Homolka completed her 12-year sentence and was released in 2005. Under Canadian law, once a sentence is completed, there are no legal restrictions unless the individual is designated a long-term or dangerous offender, which Homolka was not. Her post-prison life was characterized by secrecy and evasion. She moved to Quebec, married her lawyer's brother, changed her name, and began raising children. For years, she lived quietly, until 2017, when the media discovered that she was volunteering at her children's elementary school in Châteauguay, Quebec. Public outrage exploded. School officials, however, admitted they had no legal grounds to bar her involvement. The case sparked a legal and moral debate. Should certain offenders face lifelong restrictions, especially around children? In Canada, unlike the US, there is no equivalent to Megan's Law requiring sex offenders to register publicly unless a judge imposes specific conditions. In Homolka's case, no such conditions were applied post-release. Her case exposed a legal gap. What rights do communities have to exclude someone who has legally paid their debt, but whose crimes involved extreme harm to minors? The justice system's answer rooted in civil liberties and rehabilitation often clashed with public safety concerns and the raw emotions of survivors' families. Chapter 6. The 2023 Bernardo controversy and renewed outrage. On June 2, 2023, Paul Bernardo was transferred from Millhaven, a maximum security prison, to a medium security facility. The decision was made quietly and without notifying the victims' families in advance. When the news broke, Canadians reacted with fury. Correctional Service Canada cited internal classification protocols, claiming Bernardo no longer posed a risk of escape and had complied with institutional rules. But critics argued that the classification system was flawed too, focused on behavior behind bars and not reflective of the original crimes or psychological risk. Legally, CSC has autonomy in determining inmate placement, but the public outcry pushed politicians, including Prime Minister Trudeau, to demand answers. A federal review is ordered, and within weeks, CSC pledged to overhaul its victim notification process. This event reignited national attention not only on Bernardo, but on the broader failings of the correctional system. The perception that Bernardo, a dangerous offender convicted of serial rape and murder, was receiving lenient treatment rekindled old wounds and re-energized the conversation about justice, punishment, and public accountability. Chapter 7. Why We Can't Let It Go. Decades later, the names Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka still provoke a visceral response. Part of it is due to the sheer brutality of the crimes, but there's something deeper, an emotional rupture that the Canadian justice system never fully healed. This case forced the country to confront difficult truths, that people who look normal can be monstrous, that women can be just as violent as men, and that the legal system, in trying to secure convictions, can make morally indefensible compromises. For survivors, families, and the public, the wounds remain open. Every documentary, podcast, or news cycle about these two reopens them. But it also reflects a society still trying to understand how justice can coexist with empathy, how rehabilitation can align with accountability, and whether forgiveness is possible or even appropriate in the face of evil. The resurgence of interest in Bernardo and Homolka isn't just about macabre curiosity. It's about a nation wrestling with the consequences of its own justice system. As long as that struggle continues, their story will never truly fade. That's all for tonight's story. Another thread in the web of true crime, quietly unraveling as the night goes on. If you're still with me, thanks for listening. And if sleep has already taken you, may your dreams be peaceful and your mind at ease. I'll be here next time by the fire with another story waiting to be told. Good night, and don't forget to lock your doors.